Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 160th episode, I believe. Is that right? Yes, of Real Hawk Talk. This is Brian Nemhauser at Hawk Blogger on Twitter. This is not only a somewhat planned episode that we decided to do earlier today because Jeff and Evan and I are pretty obsessed about what's going on with the Seahawks roster and just want to geek out about that. But there is news that broke recently. So this is now officially an emergency podcast edition. And with that in mind, if you guys don't already have them, time to crack your beers because we got a lot to cover. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, and thank you, by the way, to Bud Light for this. They sent me like a case of these. I don't know if you can see this. Let me see if I can get it in front of where it won't block it out. There we go, kind of. A little bit, maybe even next to my face. How can you get this to show?
Where's my shipment?
You got to be in Seattle. I would be happy to give it to you. Like it's invisible. It's like an invisible can.
Oh, that's funny.
There we go. But pretty cool. Pretty cool. And pretty
Is
big.
that new to this year? Or
it is. It's new this year. I saw them actually serving them in a couple restaurants. Tastes very good. So that was Evan Hill at Evan Hill HB that you heard. Evan, good to see you, dude.
Good to see you. We've got some relevant news to talk about tonight.
We do. We're going to jump right into that. Let me bring in Jeff Simmons at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. How are you, my friend? On mute.
Jeff doesn't understand technology, and we're only on episode 160.
He's still on mute. I can't hear you, Jeff. I think it might be your headset. Evan's favorite thing is when Jeff has technology problems.
Jeff, I appreciate your consistency. I just want to.
I think the only thing that Evan likes more is when I use my landline.
I cannot believe you pay for that still.
Well, dude, we literally I'm going to show you. I have like 0 bars on my phone. It's like nothing.
Dude, have you not gotten one of? Are you a T-Mobile, Verizon customer? What are you?
Verizon.
Okay. So, side note, Verizon has those like cell tower things that you can connect to your router and stick in your house, and it gives you full bars. Have you not tried one of those?
I talked to them. They say there's no such thing to extend range in our area. So,
all right, well, I ditched the headset.
All right, we can hear you, dude. Welcome.
Ditch the headset.
Good to see you.
I'm good, man.
So who wants to fill people in on the news? Evan, you wanna read us in on what's happened tonight to kind of kick things off?
I'm gonna let Jeff actually.
All right, Jeff. Yeah, you're always our news guy. What's the news of the night?
Well, it seems that John Schneider had the same opinion of the cornerback room that we probably did. And the Seahawks made a trade tonight for a corner that a lot of people should be pretty familiar with. If they watched college football, University of Washington, the Seahawks traded a 2022 6th-round pick to the Jaguars for Sidney Jones. Sidney Jones was a guy I remember Brian was pretty upset they didn't take a flyer on last year when he went on waivers. And he's a guy who he had his best season of his career last year. He was a pretty big prospect coming out of UW, and he got hurt in the combine training. So he was still a 2nd-round pick despite that Achilles injury. And he's been ascending a bit his last couple of years, but he's a really interesting body type and fits into the room pretty well. And it's a great roll of the dice by the Seahawks.
Yeah. You know who's probably most excited about this signing, Evan?
William Cornell.
Yeah, that's what I think.
It's funny how that came full circle.
No, but Jeff nails it though. Considering the compensation they gave up, which I think was a 2022 6th rounder, I think, as reported this evening. Like, this is a dude who is absolutely talented. He has just struggled with injuries throughout his very short career, and some of that is luck, unluckiness. There's no question he has talent. I think considering the state of the depth of our cornerback group, this is a really good move.
Yeah, and let's put it in some context. I mean, Sidney Jones is not the end all be all, he's not Stephon Gilmore or something like that, or even a Richard Sherman, if Sherman was healthy mentally and physically. He is a guy that's had injury problems. He's on a 1-year deal. And by the way, I think his contracts, I'm looking at it now, is 1.75. So a bit of a contract addition, but they have space for that. But he was a first round pick talent that went in the second because of an injury and has made plays when he's been healthy. And I think Seahawks fans have to understand that you're not easily going to just acquire Jalen Ramsey at cutdown day like that. Those guys are not just readily available. And the truth is the Seahawks cornerback room is thin. Like it's the outside corner. I should say, I think nickel corner for the Seahawks is a great position, but the outside cornerback position is questionable. And so this is a guy that I think you have to be excited to see added to the room. This guy had more passes defensed in 9 games played last year than any Seahawk corner did for the whole season. Like, he had, according to Pro Football Focus, he had 7 passes defensed. A lot of other official sites had him at 9. The person with the most passes defensed on the Seahawks last year, Bobby Wagner, and he had 7. So, like, this guy had a higher coverage grade than Shaquille Griffin. He had a higher coverage grade than DJ Reed. And I think a lot of us are pretty bullish on DJ Reed. So, yeah, I think if he's healthy, this is a pretty important get and something that I think we could feel pretty good about, especially if you're just talking about a 6th-round pick. Jeff, I mean, where does he slot in for you? Just out of the blue, like with what you know about him, assuming he's healthy, where in the depth chart is he?
I think he's competing with Witherspoon right away to be left corner. And it's interesting. It seemed like if DJ Reed is healthy, it seems like he's going to be the right corner. But Trey Brown's pretty banged up. The other Reed they got from Houston, he seems more like a flyer. They just needed a body at that point. And I don't know if he's going to make the team. But it's interesting. There's certain beat writers who think this move might indicate that Trey Flowers might get cut, which surprised me. I think Greg Bell was reporting that he thinks this is going to lead to Trey Flowers getting cut. I think that's a huge stretch. I would be surprised if that happened, given how little money they've put at the position. But I think we've all seen the same thing out of Witherspoon this preseason. It's been a lot of downs and some better moments in the last game. And I think we know what Trey Flowers is at this point, although every year we hear how he's getting so much better. He looks the same to me. I think he's right in the competition to start a left corner right away.
I don't think it makes any sense to cut Trey Flowers. Like, the only reason you'd do that is if you needed the cap space. I mean, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the reason I think the reporters are jumping at Trey Flowers is because he has a non-guaranteed contract. I think you can gain a couple $1 million by cutting him, but he has absolutely been the most steady corner during the preseason. Not that that's saying a lot, but I don't think you cut the guy who's been playing best at the position where you're already struggling.
Yeah, so you're right. They would save a couple million by cutting, not even really, because you'd have to factor in his replacement. So they'd be saving like $1.4 million against the cap. It makes no sense with how thin the group is.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk ideal for a second. Let's say he's healthy. Let's say that he comes up to speed and he's playing well. Who are your top 2 corners that you want to see out there on the outside? Evan, do you have a point of view on that?
It's got to be Witherspoon and Reed, I think. I'm just not fully bought into Trey Flowers' development. I think he's probably a career level starter, which is fine, considering his draft status. But guys, I'm probably setting myself up for expectation failure here, but I'm really hoping Witherspoon is a massive addition this year. They need him to step up in this group and lead those young dudes, on the outside. A lot rides on him this year, frankly.
That's interesting, Jeff. I mean, I don't know where you are on this, but I certainly was hopeful for Witherspoon coming in. I think he's played meaningfully better the last game. And yeah, I was pretty hopeful with what I saw. But, I'd be fine. DJ Reed, for me, has got to be one of the guys. And then I think I'd like to see Sidney Jones if he's healthy. Between the two of them, between him and Witherspoon, I'd rather see Jones, be out there. So I think this might end up being a starting cornerback. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Jeff.
Yeah, I said it right away. I think he goes right into the competition. And I think Witherspoon's had a pretty bad preseason to the point where they had to bring in better competition than Trey Flowers. And that would have been one of the worst cornerback groups in the NFL, to be honest, if they didn't make a move, and still might be. But what's going on with Witherspoon is he had trouble making plays in the first couple games. And it seemed like he was giving way too much cushion. And in the last game, you start to see plays on the ball and pass breakups. And that's a huge turning point for them, because we know what Flowers is. Flowers sticks with the receivers, and he's always around the receiver, but he doesn't make plays on the ball. And we saw it a little from Witherspoon last game against third string receivers, but he needs to start. For him to win the job, he needs to be a lot more consistent, and that's been his issue his whole career. So if Jones can come in and play right away and be a guy who can make plays on the ball, get past deflections, that would be a big help.
So another bit of news about Sidney Jones, or at least some context. I mean, he's had 4 interceptions in the last 2 seasons. I'm pretty sure that would be the most interceptions of any Seahawks corner in the past 2 seasons, and that's without playing 2 full seasons. So, for as many times as we've gotten really frustrated at Seahawks corners for not turning their heads, not making plays on the football, not turning the ball over, Sidney Jones isn't just a good cover guy. He's been a playmaker when he's been out there. So, look, this doesn't mean that all problems are solved. And his Achilles injuries are real. Like, I was trying to read up on it, but it was another Achilles injury last year that put him on IR. So, this is not a guy that's played a lot of full seasons in the NFL. And I don't think you can count on him playing a full season this year. If he's finally healthy, I think that you benefit. You benefit from a team, the Jaguars, that had a surplus of corners. This wasn't a guy that was terrible. There was rumors that they were going to trade their first round pick that was a corner, because they have so many good corners. And sounds like maybe they decided instead to cut bait on someone who is a veteran but had some injury history. So,
Ryan, doesn't it say? Sorry to cut you off, but doesn't it say a little bit about the state of our cornerback group that Seattle traded a 6th round pick tonight for, an excess Jag cornerback, and he might literally be one of the starters entering the season. Doesn't that reflect poorly on the depth of the group overall? I'm excited about his addition. Don't get me wrong, but is it not kind of concerning as well?
Well, but we already knew that. I don't think that.
But doesn't it affirm?
Jones, that's all of a sudden the cornerback position. We thought it was good. We already knew it was bad.
And that's how I opened the show. I think they're seeing the same things we are, right? I don't think the depth is the issue. I think it's the upper echelon talent that's the issue. I don't think they have a left corner that would rank in the top 30 probably starting corners in the league.
Yeah, I think they have. I think DJ Reed is a starting quality corner. I do. And I absolutely, I'll stick back. I think we keep oversimplifying. I think Marquise Blair could be one of the best nickel corners in football. So we're talking
Talk dirty
about,
to me, Brian. Talk dirty to me.
Dude, we're going to talk about Marquise Blair in a minute when we talk about the game this past weekend. But I think we're really talking about one cornerback spot. If we're really I don't think we'd be freaking out about DJ Reed, because he was pretty solid last year. I think we were all pretty happy with the way he played. So we're talking about who's playing opposite of him. And yeah, it's wide open. but look, Evan, like they traded for Justin Coleman, the day before the end of, the year. They added DJ Reed off waivers from the 49ers and he became a good player. So I don't think it's completely like Homer, rose-colored glasses to think that this might be a guy that could help the Seahawks and improve the position.
Oh, I completely agree with that. Like if I'm Sidney Jones and there's any place in the NFL I can resurrect my career in, it's Seattle. Without question.
So let me ask you, because we joked about Will. Like for people that don't know, so Will is a Duck, University of Oregon through and through. In fact, I would say that Will probably is a bigger fan of the Ducks than he is of the Seahawks. And he thinks that Seahawks fans, just most of them, the ones that are Huskies, or at least Northwest, always just overvalue Huskies, former Huskies. And so his point of view is that like a guy like Sidney Jones is just not that good, but we just like him because he's a Husky. Is that a factor for you guys? Like, Evan, you're a semi-Husky.
I appreciate that designation. Semi-Husky.
You're semi-Husky. And I mean, I'm talking about your t-shirt size, but
yeah,
like,
I was gonna ask.
You asshole.
So, I mean, is that a factor for you? Like the fact
continue.
The fact that he's a Husky, like, is that part of the appeal, or do you think that we're overvaluing him because he's a Husky?
I think maybe a little bit, but he was legitimately like really good at college. He was a second round pick. Like he was talented. Like he was a playmaker, didn't have a ton of interceptions in college, but had a ton of pass breakups. And frankly, his downfall in the NFL has not been because of his talent. It's been due to injuries. So it's very possible he's not the same guy that he was in college. Like he's had 2 or 3 ACL injuries in the NFL. I think 2, but if he can recover from that with all the benefits of modern medicine, yeah, maybe Seattle got a steal, but only time will tell.
Jeff, do you think they're done at the corner position?
For now, yeah. I think based on where the numbers are, but there could be an in-season move if things don't work. We've seen it with Dunlap. We've seen it with Quandre Diggs, where they just didn't handle position groups well enough and they had to make further moves, where it was Tedrick Thompson or Bruce Irvin and Benson Mayoa. I think for now, they're going to, again, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, it's hard to just find outside corners at this point, but that Stephon Gilmore situation is still lingering. It doesn't seem solved anytime soon. And like Arizona lost a corner, so they're going to be trying to fix their position. So there might be bidding wars in the division. So I think for now they have enough bodies to get by, but I'm sure if they're not happy after 4 or 6 weeks and they can see an upgrade, we know what they've done it the last 2 years. They trade for Diggs and trade for Dunlap. So,
what's interesting is, as much as we're wringing our hands about the corner position, which we should, like 100%, we'll talk more about that in a minute, but I was on just randomly, I joined a conversation with a bunch of 49ers fans today about their roster and asked them what their largest position gaps are, like where their biggest concerns are. And besides quarterback, which we can all acknowledge for them, is corner, and if they've got 2 good starters, but there's not a lot behind them. And, now you go to Arizona and the talk is, I don't know if it's official yet, but the talk is Malcolm Butler may retire. They've got question marks for sure at that position. I think only the Rams have to feel pretty good. And even there, if I remember right, I think their nickel corner left. So I think they've got questions at nickel. So corner's a tough position, man. And I'm interested, Jeff, I think I remember you saying something earlier, but like, I'm not sure this means that the guy they traded for, John Reed from Houston, is automatically out of the picture. I have to pull up the roster for a second here, but they would potentially gain back the 7th round pick that they
yeah, it
traded away for
was
him.
conditional on him making the team.
So, I mean,
So he could be a practice squad stash. Or Trey Brown could go on IR for a bit.
yeah, I'm looking right now. So yeah, like they're not going to get rid of Marquise Blair, DJ Reed, Ugo Amadi, Trey Brown. Like Trey Brown could go on IR, right? We don't know his situation. For people that don't remember, IR now is only a 3-game absence, so it's not like the end of the world. So that really, it's either Trey Flowers, Witherspoon, or Reed that would go. I think it's got to be Reed. I just can't see them moving on from Flowers, or maybe they'd move on from Witherspoon, but that seems like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, probably makes the most sense that they move on from Reed, get the 7th round pick back, and essentially instead of a 7th round pick for Reed, they traded a 6 for Sidney Jones. I think.
Yeah, that's and you can maybe get Reed back on your practice squad.
Yeah. So, all right. I mean, and as far as the trade compensation, and you guys have any concerns about, like, I personally was really hoping it was going to be a running back. The Jaguars needed a running back. I was hoping that they traded one of our surplus at running back, but it's a 6th round pick. Does that give you any pause?
No, do that trade 100 times out of 100.
It's funny you mentioned that, Brian. Can we talk about Rashad Penny for like 1 second?
Yeah.
Well, that's
I think we're going to talk about him for more than a second, but go
yeah,
on.
that's an important conversation to have right now.
For like a straight up pick swap, what's the minimum you would take for him?
I would take almost anything for him.
Yeah, I would.
You would take like a 2022 7th rounder.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I wouldn't be happy. I'd love to see like a 5th round pick would be nice.
So you would take anything is your answer.
Well, yeah, because ultimately he's going to leave in free agency anyway, and then the comp pick will probably be lower than a 5th rounder. So
I don't think it hurts your team this year if you have to rely on Alex Collins more or some of the other backs you've got.
I agree with you. I'm just curious to know like where you draw the line with him.
Do you? I mean, do you have is your line different?
I don't know. And I'm just, God, my mind is clouded because I own his jersey and that was a terrible mistake in my life. But
I think he overcorrected. I really do. I don't think Penny's that bad. Like, I've made fun of him. I've called him quarter.
Do you remember him against the Steelers like 2 years ago?
I don't know if I do.
The breakaway runs he had against them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember him against the Eagles.
yeah, that
and
was the Vikings. He had a really good game against
Vikings, the Rams. Like, he's not a bad player. He like
Not at all.
The game that he like cost you a nipple. Like he.
Did you say a nipple?
Yeah, he cost
God
you a
damn
nipple. He cost you a nipple. So yeah. Why are you so like down on him?
He just hasn't. I know he hasn't played a ton of snaps in preseason, but it's like he just hasn't performed relative to like Alex Collins, who was showing off. I know Travis Homer hasn't really done anything in preseason either, but like this whole program's philosophy is built around always competing. And if we truly believe in that, if Pete Carroll truly believes in that, is Rashad Penny not the odd man out here? Is Alex Collins not making this roster? I just have a heart. It's less about Rashad Penny to me and more about how well Alex Collins is playing.
Yeah,
Like-
but you're making an either or where there isn't.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Tell me more.
Well, I'll jump in here.
Yeah.
This is one of the few benefits of BBK being injured is that Nick Bellore has moved to linebacker and is going to play he'll probably serve as a double fullback / backup linebacker, which allows you, if you want, you can keep 5 running backs. Before you probably would have had to keep 5 with Bellore.
So Carson, Penny, Homer, Collins, Who's the other
Dallas.
one? Oh, Dallas.
Yeah.
I think
I think that's a lock unless they're able to trade one of those guys. Like the only reason that Jeff, I mean, tell me if you feel different. The only reason that you'd keep less than 5 running backs is if you felt like you needed to keep 6 wide receivers.
yeah.
That's the position switch off. And you can't tell me, I want one of you to tell me because I'd love to fight about it. But like, do not tell me that Cody Thompson or Aaron Fuller
No, that's
is worth cutting an Alex Collins or, a DJ like whatever. Like, no way. I mean, people are like down on Rashad Penny because he was a first round pick and we're all annoyed about that. He's been injured a bunch. The guy's got a career average of over 5 yards a carry. He's been a big play back. Like, he's an outside zone runner in a scheme that is designed for outside pitch plays and stretches. This would be the absolute wrong time to cut him. Now, if you traded him and got some value, fine. But cutting him would not only that, but it costs you $2 million in dead cap. Like, there's no way. Like, why would you do that? I don't get it. Evan's looking at the cap situation because he wasn't.
Yeah, and to add what you said, like I see a lot of people fighting for Cody Thompson or Aaron Fuller. There is no team in the NFL that would probably pluck them if they got cut tomorrow. Those are guys you can easily put in your practice squad if you are high on them. You can keep them as like the ghost roster guys. Penny would get picked up, waiver claim by multiple teams.
Most likely. I mean, he's just worth more. I mean, there's so many stupid GMs out there and they value people that were first round picks just because of first round picks.
Sure.
Sounds familiar.
Right? Well, I mean, let's talk about the guys that you are most likely to potentially get traded from the Seahawks. We just talked about Rashad Penny. The guy that I think, Evan, that's a former first round pick that might not make the roster is LJ Collier. Like, I look at the numbers and I look at what they need. I'm like, Jeff, let me ask you, would you rather, when the roster cuts get announced tomorrow, would you be happier if you saw LJ Collier's name listed as cut or Robert Kimdiche's name? Like, but let me ask you the other way. Would you be happier to keep Collier or Kimdiche if it was one of those two?
MDJ.
And why?
Because I think he has a legitimate ceiling and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But I think similar to what we said about Trey Flowers, I think we sort of know what Collier is at this point. I think he's a dime a dozen player. It's especially unfortunate they took him where they did because he looks like a rotational run stopping defensive lineman that has no juice as a pass rusher. Those guys you can find anywhere. Max effort. Yeah. And I was like, it's to me, I don't know if Kimdiche is not anything, but at least he was like the number 1 prospect in the country. He was a 5-star player. And at least there's some upside and a ceiling there. For Collier, I don't see how anyone would be excited about him making the team other than justifying his previous draft status.
So Seahawks would actually lose cap space if they cut him.
Cut Collier?
Yeah,
that makes sense. He's 3 years into his deal.
How much?
they would lose about 1 million, but if they trade him, they would save about $1 million.
That's my
I came
question.
up with a trade idea
Do you
for
think
him
that
today.
he has any trade value?
No.
Really? Not even like a seventh, a former first
Yeah,
round pick,
maybe.
not even done with his.
Like maybe a flyer.
Like I was looking, I saw the Jets traded for like a defensive end today, and then someone, I think it was Field Yates, tweeted out their defensive end group. It is real bad. It's real
It's rough.
Like the Jets are a rebuilding defense. They put all their picks into offense. If I were the Seahawks, I would try to work out a deal of Collier for one of their receivers because they have Denzel Mims, who's like their sixth string receiver right now, or because they have Corey Davis, Keelan Cole, Elijah Moore, and Jameson Crowder. So they have Denzel Mims as their fifth string receiver. They got to have someone else. That's who I would be targeting for a Collier trade.
Guys, I know we make jokes about this all the time, but it's absolutely horrifying seeing LJ Collier's like contract profile at age 26 going into his third year in the NFL. That's just really depressing.
It was a bad pick. It was a bad
Jesus
pick when it was
Christ.
made.
Yeah, look, the two guys we just talked about were two very predictable bad first round picks that turned out to be very bad.
Well, I mean, this is a product of what I think has been a really flawed draft philosophy from Schneider. You know, Jeff, you and I have talked about this a ton, but Schneider will look at a draft, and where there's a deep position group, he will let it run off the board and go after the thinner position groups to make sure he gets what he needs. You know, the cream of a very thin crop. Like, and so LJ Collier, I mean, you even hear him say it, like, we wanted to get one of the pass rushers before they were gone. Like, that is I think that is a super poor principle. And I think it's bit them time and again. Like, they very well could have lost out on DK Metcalf with that draft philosophy. And they happened to go in and get him at the end. But imagine what we'd be saying if they didn't get DK Metcalf in the second round and they drafted LJ Collier in the first and, you know, some other dude in the second. Like, yeah, I think it was a Tim Ruskell-esque pick, you know?
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Lawrence Jackson, who Ruskell did draft.
Yeah. So, all right. Collier, I think all of us are like, hey, if they can get any trade value, fine. Right now, I have him making the roster, but just barely. And I went back and forth between him and Kimdiche. I think Kimdiche being injured. And then I think Geno Atkins, guys, like, assuming he's available, I think they sign him after the first week of the season. And then I think they cut probably Collier. Like, I don't think you're going to cut Rasheem Green. I don't think you're going to cut Kerry Hyder Jr. or Brian Monet or Al Woods.
Brian, do you want to explain that? Why they'd sign him after the first week of the season?
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you if you wanted to explain it.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I think for folks that don't know, veteran contracts are guaranteed for the full season if they're on the roster that first week. But if you sign them after the first game of the season, their full season contracts are not guaranteed. So that's why you sometimes see this happen with the 2013 Seahawks, where they cut Clinton McDonald and miraculously were able to get him back. And he was a big part of that run. So it does happen. It's possible Geno Atkins will get picked up by someone else before then, but he may just be like happy to wait and come back after that point. So you guys want to talk 53-man roster, or you want to talk this last preseason game?
Jeff, where's your head at?
I think we've been pretty down. I think we should talk about the preseason game first. That will lead into, because I think there was I think, Brian, your whole mentality seemed to turn after watching that game.
It did. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons for that, but before I've been talking a lot. I mean, what were your impressions? What were your takeaways from that game, Jeff?
A drastic change from what we'd seen the first two games. But more importantly, I think there was three players. I'm going to say even two players. That one of the worst parts of just the first couple of games is just no one was really flashing, other than like Rasheem Green or Curhan, the right tackle. They just looked like they had a hopeless roster. But when you saw two guys, Marquise Blair on the first snap of the game, getting into the backfield in a run stop, and then the touchdown. But seeing him and D. Eskridge, just their athletic ability and just like their eye-popping talent compared to what we had watched those painful first two games where they just looked dreadful. That just completely was like a shot in the arm to me. Just seeing those two guys almost just move. They look athletically completely different to the other guys playing those positions. And Brian, I thought you said it perfectly with your article this week, just like Ugo Amadi, very solid, very reliable cover player. But watching what Blair can do just as like a weapon, he is completely putting him and Jamal Adams in his defense at the same time. Like, there's a lot of exciting things going on. And then you see what Eskridge can do compared to like a Freddie Swain And we've talked about the bottom of this group so much. Eskridge is just a completely different athlete from a speed perspective and from a route running perspective. You can see why they liked him so much. I don't know if he'll make it through the season. We know his age and all the questions with him, but just seeing those two guys we really haven't seen play much, completely, it was like a shot in the arm to the whole Seahawks team for me.
I mean, Evan, what wins in the NFL? Like, it is twitchy, explosive, instinctive athletes that just jump off the screen. It is a Tyreek Hill that everyone just it's like, holy crap, how do you deal with that guy? It is, a Jalen Ramsey or, these guys that just jump off the screen and you're like, they're a handful.
Yeah.
I've been a huge Marquise Blair fan, and I'm telling you, that guy, I don't care who it was against. The difference between him and the other guys that were on that field was the size of the football field. It was a huge difference, and I think that bodes really, really well for how he's going to impact the season.
I think people forget that Blair has that big hit swagger. Like coming out of college, he was there were plays people compared him to Cam Chancellor. Mm-hmm. Like he is a badass blank on the field, delivering big hits, a big playmaker, can take the ball away from the offense. But I think first of all, I think people need to prepare for the Blair show this year. I think a lot of people were discouraged by his early injury last year in week 2, week 3, something like that. And obviously he didn't do much his rookie year, but it's very possible this guy, fast forward 16 or 17 weeks from now, I would not be surprised if we were talking about Blair. This is going to sound insane, but it's one of the better defensive players on this football team.
I don't think that sounds insane.
It really could be.
Do people remember last preseason? He was the guy, not that the press was talking about, sure, but every defensive player on the Seahawks was like, this dude is gonna blow up. And he didn't get a chance to make a huge impression the first couple of games. He looked fine. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think there's a chance that he's like Jeff said, you pair him with a Jamal Adams and a healthy Jamal Adams and a Quandre Diggs and a defensive line that is so much deeper and more talented. And now you've got a Jordan Brooks, who also, I think, has looked great this preseason and looks like he's ready to take a big next step. And Bobby Wagner. I mean, now you start getting you get big hits, you get turnovers, and you just get plays that turn the game. That got me super excited to see the way he played. I think Cody Barton, he's not going to be a starter. I don't think there's a place for him to be a starter. For people that don't understand that, Bobby Wagner's the inside backer. You're not going to play him over Bobby. Jordan Brooks is the other off-ball linebacker. You're not going to play him over Jordan Brooks. Sorry, those guys are great. And you're not going to play him at Sam because it's an on the line of scrimmage position going up against the tight end every time. And Barton's really not that player. I think you could get away with it, but it's not his strength. But he looks like a starting quality linebacker, and that's good. Look at the 49ers last year. I mean, they lost guys for certain periods of time, and you had Eli Greenlaw step in there and look great. And that was a big deal for them. Having a good backup middle linebacker and off-ball linebacker is a really good thing. And Cody Barton looks like he's taking the next step. I mean, Evan, you were talking about him, before we even started the show. I mean, what's your take on where Cody Barton is?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what we were just discussing before the show, honestly. It's not some flashy take, but he's a very capable backup if he continues on the path that he's currently on. I think we all expected when he was drafted to come in and be a potential solid starter that just hasn't. He's entering his third year. Is that right? His third year?
Yes.
Yes.
I want to say third year. Yeah,
Yep.
This is the best
Same draft as
preseason.
DK.
Yeah, this is the best preseason he's had, best training camp he's had. I don't really see a starting spot for him, but like Brian, you said, you can never have a good, too many good enough players on this team. But I think the one defensive player we're not really talking about, guys, is Daryl Taylor.
Okay. What jumped out to you about Daryl?
Twitchy, looked fast, got to the quarterback, created pressure, had a sack. I don't know if he had 2 sacks. I know he had 1 sack at least. Like, that is a player that if he steps in this year and can be disruptive, all of a sudden, I think the ceiling for this defense increases pretty significantly. He's one of those players with an incredibly high ceiling that I think if, they can solidify him technique wise, because he's a little raw coming out of college, then it could be a big boost for this defense.
Yeah, what did you think of Taylor's preseason overall, Jeff?
I think he's flashed. I think he's got a lot to learn. I think there's going to be quite a big learning curve if he's going to be your Sam backer early on. I think as a pass rusher, you can see his quickness off the ball. I think he said it multiple times, and you saw it last game. He needs to like flatten out his pass rushing. He keeps going around the quarterback. And last game we saw him do the proper move, and you saw how quickly he got into that backfield. When he had that sack, there aren't a lot of people who can do what he did to do that sack. So I think you can see why the Seahawks liked him. You can see the athletic skills. If I was running the team, I'd rather him just be a defensive end and then work him in, have him focus on that, and then develop him as a linebacker later. But you can see what he does well, and you can clearly see what he's going to struggle with. And that's point of attack stuff, playing the run, setting the edge. But man, if he, like what Evan said, there was a lot of different I remember I used to talk about this with Brian a lot. When they were in the playoff, last time they won a playoff game, I think they played Green Bay. If you look at a lot of guys who were on that defense, there was Clowney and there was Bobby. There was not a lot of fast ascending athletes on that team. It was a lot of filler. There was Shaquille Griffin, and there was, before that, there was all kinds of guys, Delano Hill, and like Rasheem Green was maybe their most explosive edge rusher. Now you have Jordan Brooks, you have Daryl Taylor, you have Marquise Blair, you have Jamal Adams, you have a pretty good rotation of the D-line. Other than corner, you got Puna up the middle. Other than corner, which has all the questions we talked about, there's a lot of interesting athletes on this defense. And it's a pretty good turnaround considering how much they had to turn over the roster coming out of 2017, where we had years with Barcavius, Mingo, and just KJ was a little older. KJ was so sound, but their athletic ability on defense to me is really exciting when you can get all these guys on the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking about like which of the guys that could really change the ceiling for the Seahawks season, and which of the guys that could really take a huge step forward and become impact players. Jordan Brooks has got to be high on that list, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's a guy that you just don't know exactly how good he can be, but he was pretty damn elite at college, and the way he impacted those games. And he looks like he's ready to take a step forward and not just be a good player out there, but be a game-changing player. Be really big deal if he can be that good and not just good. I think that we're seeing two guys at the Sam position that offer pass rush that's super interesting. Alton Robinson is another guy that you have to talk about. Like, every single time, even last year as a rookie, and now every time Alton Robinson steps on the field, which for whatever reason, he did not get as many chances as any of us would have wanted last year to do that. Well, he always seemed to make plays. So, I mean, I think those two guys have a chance to really impact the team. And that's not even talking about, Kerry Hyder, who you guys know I'm a huge fan of, and some of the other guys that are out there.
Well, and it's interesting. A lot of people were studying Denver last week because they played all their starters and there was a quarterback competition going on. So I know a lot of like film people and non-Seahawks people were studying the Denver tape. And I couldn't tell you how many people I saw tweet this or just talking around the league. They said the one thing watching the film of Denver was Jordan Brooks. And someone had like a 5-clip things where Jordan Brooks just made plays that like a lot of people just can't make. Like, I remember we were comparing him to Patrick Queen And we were all like going crazy about that. I think Brooks is like a tier up from Queen already, and he hasn't even hit his ceiling yet. So I was wrong about that pick. And Brian, I'm surprised you haven't even brought up Phil Haynes yet, who coming out of that preseason game, like there was some interesting stuff in that game.
I mean, we haven't switched over to offense. You brought up Marquise Blair, and we had to talk about him for a little bit. D. Eskridge. We got to talk about D. Eskridge, and we'll definitely talk about Phil Haynes in the offensive line and center in general. I know Evan is dying to talk about his favorite player, who he's getting a jersey for now, Kyle Fuller, but that's a little bit later. D. Eskridge, like, I got to repeat this because it's going to keep coming up and over again. I actually rewatched our draft day reaction when Jeff, you, Nathan, and I watched as they picked D. Eskridge, and we were all like hoping for Creed Humphrey to be the name, or like Nathan wanted to trade back, and I gave the pick an F, which I knew was going to live in infamy no matter what. And I tried to explain it then, and I explain it now. Nothing to do with D. Eskridge. It had everything to do with position value and what I thought they could do with Creed Humphrey. While I still think it was a huge freaking mistake to not take a center at that spot, I'm excited. I am thrilled about what I've seen from D. Eskridge. Like, he is, just like you said about Marquise Blair, he is a different class of athlete than anyone else they've got at receiver after obviously DK and Tyler, right? Like, Evan, like, is there any question about Freddie Swain or D. Eskridge in terms of who should be getting those snaps as the third receiver?
No, not even close.
I mean, so did you get a chance to watch Eskridge's plays in that preseason game, Evan?
Yeah, I watched the game.
Okay, I didn't know. So didn't want to assume. So, I mean, that end around was easy. It was 9 yards. It was easy. And I don't even think that was like the idea that we're going to have that in the offense. I don't know if you saw the play off of that a couple plays later where he ran
horizontal
it again.
sweep.
They faked it and they handed off to Alex Collins, who got like 6 or 7 yards the other way. That's going to be freaking difficult for defenses to deal with. And I think they can do that with DK Metcalf at times. I think they can do that with Tyler Lockett. I think they can mix and match those guys. They're all capable of making plays with the ball in their hands. And that wasn't even with Russell Wilson as the trigger man to make play action off of those plays and make throws. Like, I think Eskridge is going to be potentially like a breakout star. I don't think that's crazy to say. A lot of it has to do with whether he can stay healthy. But I mean, do you think that's crazy to say that we could be talking at the end of the season like Eskridge is like one of the top rookie receivers, in the NFL?
I don't think it's crazy. I think what makes him unique is that they're going to have a very specific role for him. That what I think it makes him really valuable is how well he's going to complement DK and Lockett, because the Seahawks don't have a dominant like space player. And if you looked at Eskridge film, that's what he was good. And there were some people who obviously he'll never hit this ceiling, but he came from the same conference. They thought he had some Antonio Brown in his game.
Wow.
And obviously, I don't think he'll ever hit close to that ceiling, but I just mean stylistically, in terms of like the way he separates and the way he is with the ball in his hands. Obviously, he's 24 years old, and Antonio Brown was the best receiver in the NFL before things kind of went off the rails. But I mean, stylistically, when you see what he can do speed-wise, you can see why they liked him and why.
Yeah, go ahead, finish, Jeff. Sorry.
No, why they thought he complimented, and that's why they prioritized him.
Evan, you know how I like to get out of my skis because it's fun. And I have to say, I don't know if you've heard Eskridge talk, but there's a couple things that, besides the plays he made on the field, that I loved. So, one, he's bigger than I think people realize. He's a former running back, and so he's got a little of like the Golden Tate like physicality to his potential that I think people think he's 5'9", so he's got to be like
he's THICC.
He's part of the Thick Thigh Club, I think. I think
he is.
Thigh Talk is back. but he also like he's got swag. I mean, he talked in his press conference multiple times about that he's an alpha, and he loved that, he knows DK's an alpha, and he loves that DK like has recognized him as an alpha. I'm telling you, Doug Baldwin, Golden Tate, Sherman, they all talked about being alphas. Bobby, like they all talk about that back in the day. I think it's a good sign when a player comes in and they identify themselves that way and they back it up. And then I love that after the game, someone was like, what does it take to be good at an end around, like a fly sweep like that? It's like, I don't know what it takes to be good, but I can tell you what it takes to be great. You got to be fast like me. Like the guy's got a ton of confidence and swag. And I think he's shown that the game kind of comes easy to him. Like, yes, only a snippet, but like, I think that when you can come into the NFL and have that confidence and feel like you can separate from NFL level athletes that quickly, that usually is a really, really good sign of what your potential trajectory can look like.
God damn it. I'm getting excited about this football season.
Yes.
Frick.
I mean, imagine him running away from Fred Warner. Like,
Guys,
imagine
this-
if that happens.
Guys, this offense could be really good.
Yeah.
We're not really talking about it. I know we're talking about individual players, but the one thing that stood out to me on Saturday night, yes, sometime over the weekend, was that this offense looked different from a horizontal perspective. The routes, how they stretch the field. These are things that we saw throughout, with Shoddy and Daryl Bevel, but it's really a point of emphasis in sort of the Sean McVay led offenses. I think Shane Waldron could really solve some things we've been complaining about for like several years now. And he might be taking us to the promised land, folks. He might be. I might be getting a little bit excited about this.
I'm there with you. Like that's part of what's just changed my tune a lot about the team is even with Geno Smith and Sean Mannion back there and with the backup offensive line, we were seeing for the first time, Jeff, we were seeing the fly sweep. We were seeing the play off, like the counters off of the fly sweep. We were seeing swing passes to running backs in space where they could easily get 6-7 yards without like a lot of thought and without a lot of time spent in the pocket. We were seeing screen plays. We were seeing like, I don't think it's any accident that the Seahawks had the 4th highest pass blocking grade of any team in the NFL in the preseason, which is crazy. They've never been that high. And I don't think it's because all of a sudden their pass blocking is outstanding. I think that they're not having to pass block as long. And I think the fact that I don't think we can even conceive of what a Seahawks offense with Russell Wilson can look like, where he's getting sacked less than 30 times in a season. Like, I don't think any of us can really wrap our heads around how this team can look, removing all of those negative plays of 5, 10, 15, 20 yards. And forget the injury potential, right? So I'm super excited about that. And we didn't even see with DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett or Chris Carson, like Dwayne Brown, Gabe Jackson, like there's a lot to be like super intrigued by with what we saw.
Yeah, and that's why the hire made so much sense. And we don't know how Waldron is a play caller, but I know, Brian, you were excited about this, but stylistically, what the Rams did really well is everything looked simple, but there was a lot of variations to it, which made pass protection easier. And their offensive line talent with Los Angeles got a lot worse, but they were able to pass protect well because they had the upper hand on defenses. They were able to get the ball off quick because they weren't sure what the play was going to be. And if you can do that for Russell, because he's one of the league leaders in sacks every year. There was in the Schottenheimer offense, which was great vertically. There was a lot of long developing plays, and the run game and the pass game never really tied together, and it was never really complemented. They did play action more last year. They threw more in early downs. That was great. That was progressive. But the run game always felt like a completely different offense than the pass game which is why there was such a war about it almost. Because if you were running, you were almost taking away from the pass game rather than having it work together. And that's, again, what Shanahan does so well. And that's where this offense started. So just seeing how that one play where Eskridge opened up a run to Collins and seeing how they can do play action. And I know you were excited, but just that screen to Alex Collins early in the game when they lost yards, they had the penalty, and how much that completely changed their down and distance. They threw, I think you said, 11 passes to running backs.
Yep.
So this was a completely new look. And really, it's been the biggest thing why we need Waldron to be good is they need to unlock that part of Russell's game because he doesn't take checkdowns. He holds on to the ball too long. If easy stuff is there and it's part of the play design, it can really help because I can't tell you how many drives it just feels like Seattle starts off good. They get to the 50 and they have something stupid, a penalty or a lost play. They never recover. They punt inside the 50 and Evan goes crazy. If they can take that part out of their game every week and get more points, just an extra 2 drives of points, this can do wonders for this team.
Evan, I mean, I think part of the reason we get so frustrated and like get so angry at this team is like you look at it and you're like, they should be dominating teams. Like Russell Wilson is a really good quarterback. Maybe one of the top 3 or 4 in the NFL. Like, I don't think that's crazy to say. He has that potential. He's so dangerous. He throws the best deep ball in the NFL. Like, amazing down the field. If you can combine that with just some simplicity, just some repeatable, simple plays that are short and intermediate, that take the pass rush out of it, that make your offense more reliable, that reduces the amount of 3 and outs where it's like, oh my God, throw downfield, running play for 2 yards, and then no third down. If you just get rid of some of those and have more third and shorts that are convertible or less third downs in general, like they are full of Ferraris in the garage. Like they've got maybe DK Metcalf could end up being the best receiver in the whole league. Like he absolutely has that potential. Chris Carson's great. Like
let's go through Seattle's offense for a second. You've got Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, Dwayne Brown. I think Damian Lewis is starting on the right side.
Yep.
Is that right?
Left
side. Or sorry,
Dwayne.
on the left side. Yeah. You've got, actually, we're not going to talk about center for a second. We've got Gabe Jackson and Brandon Shell, who was a stud last year. Gabe Jackson is also a stud. You've got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, D. Eskridge, that wide receiver 3, and Gerald Everett. Is that the best offense in the NFL from a talent perspective?
Up there. Tampa.
I think it's up there. I mean, it's hard to. It depends on like if you're talking, entire.
Are they at
group.
minimum top 3?
Yeah, I don't think there's a way I'd say it is I don't think that there's a point where you say like there's a real weakness on the skill position perspective. Like
this offense should dominate this year. I want to see them put up 40 plus on the Rams. I want to see Jalen Ramsey become DK Metcalf's personal bitch. That's what I want to see.
I think the matchup between DK Metcalf and Jalen Ramsey is one that by itself has a huge impact on
I want to see Jalen Ramsey holding DK Metcalf's pocket as he exits the freaking locker room. That's what I want. That's what I want to see. I want this offense
to
have an alpha type personality. That's what I want.
I want that.
I want the Legion of Boom, but on the offense.
Jeff, is it? I mean, this is pushing the. I was never a big Todd Gurley fan. I'll just put that out there. I think Todd Gurley was fine, but I never thought he was special. I think Chris Carson is a more talented back than Todd Gurley. Tell me. I'm guessing you disagree. Tell me why. Like, what would it be about Todd? What is Todd Gurley back when he was healthy? What did he do better than what Chris Carson does?
Pass catching. Peak Todd Gurley. Yeah, peak Todd Gurley was one of the best pass catching running backs in the league, and he was so good in space. And they just ran a lot of their off. He was their main weapon on offense, and just in terms of like yards after contact, Carson's right there. But Gurley was so good with the ball in his hands in space on like a screen play, 3rd and 10. Carson's still developing that. Carson has the skill set to do it. Just when Gurley was in peak form at Georgia in early years, he was so dominant that.
Let's put a pin in that and get back at the end of the season. I'm not afraid to put that out there. I think Chris Carson in this offense could put up numbers the level of what Todd Gurley did. But let's we've avoided it a lot. We've talked all the good things. Center's a shit show. Kyle Fuller, good run blocker, had some good run blocks in this game. Once again had a pass blocking grade from PFF under 30. And this is not unique. He has consistently been a shit show as a pass blocker. It sounds like he's going to be the starter. Ethan Posick is coming back. Ethan Posick is no one that any of us are super excited about either, right? Meanwhile, Phil Haynes, I mean, you guys give me shit all the time about Phil Haynes and being on the Phil Haynes bandwagon. And who knows? We'll see. But he ends preseason as the third highest rated pass blocking offensive lineman, tackle, center, guard, any of them in the NFL. Third highest grade, 85, I think an 85 pass blocking grade. Gave up 0 pressures in 73 pass blocking snaps this preseason. 0. This is a guy that had upside. This is a guy that Dwayne Brown was talking up after like 3 OTA practices or, whatever it was, as a pleasant surprise. And a guy that played his first NFL game in a divisional round matchup in Green Bay in the playoffs and held his own against a very good defensive line in Green Bay. So, Jeff, this drives me nuts. Like, it drives me nuts. It seems so obvious to me. Like, why would they not be? They've had Phil Haynes snapping. Why not even open it up for him while Ethan Posick's been out, of like being a guy that could compete with Kyle Fuller at the center spot? Like, imagine how differently we'd feel about this line if Phil Haynes was stepping in at center.
Yeah, I'm completely dumbfounded by it, because it seems like Pete, just every year we're like, they got to play this one guy more, and Pete can't seem to figure it out. And everyone who's watched the show probably remembers my opinion of Brandon Jackson. Kyle Fuller to me is the offensive Brandon Jackson, where he just like does the right thing. He's situationally sound, but just has 0 ceiling as a player. He's just a low ceiling and low floor player, which to me is the worst. And Fuller reminds me of that. So I can't understand what I'm missing here, because we saw him play Aaron Donald last year in that road game, and it was an absolute mess. We've seen him play in the preseason they didn't play one type A. Like, I think Bradley Chubb played for it, but nothing in the middle that resembled a type A kind of player game wrecker. They got to play him against DeForest Buckner week 1. So I'm terrified of that position. He reminds me of Brandon Jackson. I don't know what I'm missing here, because he just looks like a practice squad level player. Like, Posick at least was league average for a while last year. He can be a stopgap. We saw what he did well and what he needed to work on, but we were excited that he was an upgrade over what they had in the past. But Fuller, I don't know. And we joked to you about Haynes because he's played like 2 games in 3 years, but the thing isn't wrong. Like, he looks like a sound offensive lineman who's physical, who's, most importantly, he's just a technician, and he's got power. Like, you saw him blow guys up off the line. And if their whole thing was to get their best 5 linemen on the field, that used to be their thing. To me, this is a no-brainer. Like, the ceiling of Haynes versus Fuller, you're just hoping doesn't screw up. I think Haynes could be a good, like, if Gabe Jackson got hurt and Haynes started, I think they'd be fine. But to have all 3 of them, and Damian Lewis is a guy I think is going to have a monster year. I think he's going to jump off the page this year. So if you have Lewis, Haynes, and Jackson in the middle of your offensive line, that's by far the best group they've had since the Super Bowl years.
Yeah, Evan, I know how excited you are about Kyle Fuller. So I know this is a tough conversation for you, because you've been standing Kyle Fuller all preseason. But seriously, some of the debate happening on Seahawks Twitter is, do you shift Damian Lewis to center? Because he has started an NFL game at center. and play Haynes at guard. I personally would rather keep Lewis where he is and play Haynes at center, which doesn't sound like an option right now. But between those two choices, if they were choices, do you have a preference?
Absolutely. You keep Damian Lewis at right guard. You do not take him out or at left guard at the position of development that he's been focused on for the past couple of years. There are players and options available at center. Austin Ryder, for example, is still a free agent. There are players you can trade for at center. The Titan center was released today. There are tons of options they can make at center. What disgusts me most about the whole offseason approach to center is not even related to really Ethan Posick outside of, let me put it this way. So Ethan Posick was injured for all of training camp. Okay. So who was Kyle Fuller competing against for the position?
Nobody.
Exactly.
Brad Lundblade.
Yeah.
Nobody realistically was brought in. He was handed the spot. You did not compete for his position. That's my biggest problem is they didn't even bring anybody in to seriously compete with him. So Pete can hand him the job, but this is going to be a predictably bad disaster.
Well, let's play this game for a second. I mean, I really wanted Creed Humphrey last year, in the draft. That's who I wanted them to pick. And Creed Humphrey looks like he's going to be a good center, maybe a great center. But that means you don't get Eskridge. So if you could right now, if you could snap your fingers, I want to hear from both of you on this. If you could snap your fingers and have Creed Humphrey as your starting center, but not have D. Eskridge, and instead you're depending on the Penny Harts and the Freddie Swains and maybe a later draft pick that's a receiver, who knows? Which do you think would get you more confident in the Seahawks' ability to be great this year? Evan? I don't understand your snaps.
I'm snapping. The magic is occurring. Creed Humphrey is Seattle starting center.
That's what you do?
Yeah, without question.
Jeff?
Yeah, no brainer. Creed Humphrey to me raises the ceiling more than a third receiver. And again, if you watch the reaction of when the draft pick happened, I said I like D. Eskridge. I think he's a good player. But I thought Creed Humphrey was a first round pick. I was stunned he was even available. In everything I read, I thought he was going to go end of the first round, early second at the latest. I thought you had something fall in your lap. And to me, a good offensive lineman raises your ceiling a lot higher than a third receiver.
Yeah. Ironically, it's a little tougher for me just because I think Eskridge looks so great, but I do think that you can get a closer approximation to what he'd give you in a Penny Hart than you can to what Kyle Fuller is going to give you at center. And the thing that's so friggin' aggravating is if Phil Haynes was the guy that they really put in to give a chance at center, then you could potentially be looking like a genius. You'd like, okay, we've got an up and coming, great pass blocking, great run blocking center, young line at certain positions. And you also have Eskridge, right? You could have it. You could have it. But for whatever reason, I think we all just have to hope that Kyle Fuller is better than we're giving him credit for.
Should Seattle make a trade for center before the season starts?
Well, I was wondering, Creed Humphrey's backup is Austin Blythe, who was the Rams center. They signed Blythe probably not thinking they would have a chance at Creed Humphrey because no one thought Creed Humphrey would go to the end of the second round. I'm wondering if that's possible. It's not exciting.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of the only guys that makes some sense, Jeff, in that he would know the Rams offense and could slide in. I think getting some other center to come in and pick up all the line calls and
yeah.
I mean, you can get a veteran to do it, but I'm not a believer that the guys sitting out there on this that are street free agents right now are worth going after. And the guy, I mean, we just saw the Dolphins or someone else cut
the Dolphins.
Skura, was that his name? The former Ravens starting center. He's no good. Like, I don't want them to go get him. I just want them to put a better player in that position that's already on the roster. Oh God. Yeah. For those that are listening and not watching, Evan has changed his background image to the
Look at this wonderful man.
the cherubic center.
Look at this
himself.
big boy. I lust after him.
Evan would love to have that guy. I mean,
Creed. Look, any man who's named Creed.
yeah. I mean, you guys are preaching to the choir. I mean, that's why I was so frustrated during the draft. I mean, they could not have asked the draft to fall any better to them. They had their pick of the centers and thumb their nose at them. But I don't know. Like with all that, we were super bullish. We haven't even talked about like Colby Parkinson because he didn't play in the preseason, but he was looking like he's going to be a game changer. I even thought Penny Hart looked good in that game, and he's had a great preseason. So there's a lot with Alex Collins. I think we all were really excited what we saw there. Like a lot of good stuff. How much can Kyle Fuller mess this up? Like, how concerned are you about Kyle Fuller?
Do you guys remember watching Aaron Donald rush Joey Hunt? Do you guys remember that?
I remember a lot of people rushing Joey.
Do you remember what that looked like? Joey Hunt literally falling over on his back.
Yeah, Joey Hunt, who may be the starting center for the Colts come week 1.
I don't want to talk about it.
No, that's because Ryan Kelly could be on the COVID list.
I know. It's just crazy. Good centers are underrated. I know, Brian, and you and I share this opinion, but like, it's a position a lot of people forget about just because they're typically never one-on-one. They're, helping the guards typically with stunts and similar, but a bad center can really wreak havoc on your offense. It really can. And I'm just worried about Kyle. Like, let's say Kyle Fuller goes down and Ethan Posick is still hurt. Who's starting?
Phil Haynes, baby.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
They are having him snap for a reason. Like he is in the list.
If Phil Haynes is that good, why is he not starting in center?
That's what we've just been asking.
But that's my point. Like, why is he not starting then?
We've had that question about a number of players for the Seahawks that have clearly been better than their options and not been used. I mean,
well, Evan, remember
always making the best choice.
There was a lot of Tedrick Thompson and Delano Hill over Marcus Blair that drove Evan crazy. Is that the conversation we're going to be having all year again?
Yeah.
Every year we come out and Pete at the end of the year was like, well, I really should have played this guy more. And everyone on Seahawks Twitter was like asking them to play him in like week 1. Pete's like, well, studying the film, I realized Tedrick Thompson sucks and I shouldn't have played him 16 straight weeks.
I have never hated, but simultaneously loved something so much in my life.
Yeah. I mean, I will never forget. I mean, when I was doing the roster today and I looked at some of the keeps at safety, I mean, we were talking about Lano Hill just last year. Like Tedrick Thompson, like those guys were brutal. I mean, brutal. So yeah, they've definitely stuck with players that they shouldn't stick with. And I'm going to keep standing Phil Haynes. I thought that Jamarco Jones should be getting chances at right tackle. Like, thankfully Brandon Shell's worked out, but I think Jamarco Jones, yes, he had a bad snap where he had the wrong snap count or something got messed up. But guess what? What people don't realize, because everyone focused on that one snap, the rest of the game, he was nails. In fact, he had a great path blocking grade in this last preseason game. But no one knows that because he had one bad snap to start the game. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm almost hoping that Fuller stubs a toe and Haynes gets a chance. And then the coaches are like, wow, he is pretty good. We should just keep this going. So I know we've been at it for a while. I do want to talk about potential surprise cuts. Can we talk about that for a second?
I like this topic.
You should probably, transition into your roster projection.
Yeah, well, so How do you think we should go about it, Jeff? Like, what's the best way to talk about it? You have an idea?
Maybe the biggest decisions they have to make.
Okay. So let's do this. Running back, we've already talked about. I think that they should keep 5. Those 5 are Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, Alex Collins, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas. Is there any disagreement there?
Like, I wouldn't care if Travis Homer got cut, but
you and I both, brother.
Yeah.
I just think it's clear that that the coaching staff sees him differently, and he is a core special teams player.
yeah.
As much as fans are like, cut Travis Homer, I'd be fine with that, but they're not going to do that.
No, I view him the same way I described Kyle Fuller and Brandon Jackson. I think he's a low ceiling, low floor player.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Wide receiver. I don't know if you feel like I don't think there's a big decision to make there. I think they only keep 5. And I don't think Cody Thompson, Aaron Fuller, you and I talked about this. There's no one else that's a tough choice, right? So
no, I think the only thing becomes interesting if someone hits the waiver wire.
Right. Tight end. This one's a little wonky, right? And everyone knows Will Dissly, Gerald Everett make it. What some people don't know is Colby Parkinson, even though he's injured, he can't be placed on PUP. So, because you have to start training camp on the PUP list. He got injured during training camp, so he can't be PUP. He can be put on the injured list, but that means he's out for 3 weeks. And it sounds like there's some question about maybe even he could be available week 1. There's debates, or at least it's in. So I think putting him on IR seems a little bit conservative. Maybe they do it to save a roster spot. I think Tyler Mayberry makes it. Nobody knows much about him other than, I'm just from players and coaches. I think they think pretty highly of him. He played in this last game. He is a blocker. He is like what's a good, like he's kind of like a Zach Miller type, except, less of a receiver. So like, he's just a strong blocker.
Ryan
Hannum. Yeah. I think he's a little stouter than Hannum, but Hannum was the key. So I think they keep those 4 tight ends. But then offensive line. This is where I think it gets really interesting. Cedric Ogbuehi. This was a guy that I think all of us and everyone probably even now assume was a lock. But I'm interested in what you guys think here. So we know Dwayne Brown makes it. Let's just talk tackles for a second. Dwayne Brown definitely makes it. Brandon Shell definitely makes it. That's 2. Jamarco Jones definitely makes it. That's 3. I think Stone Forsythe definitely makes it.
Agreed.
Like, there were questions about whether he was too tall to be a run blocker, but they thought he was a good pass blocker. He had a great run blocking grade in preseason. I just don't think you can let him go.
He played well last game.
He did. So that's 4 tackles. That's already like usually enough. Like, you don't necessarily need more. I think that Jake Curhan, who's the undrafted free agent out of Cal, multi-year, I think he was a 4-year starter there. They played him at right tackle and they played him at left tackle. I think they initially were thinking about him as guard. I have him above Ogbuehi. I think Ogbuehi doesn't make this squad. I'm curious if you guys like, this is a guy that they were hoping Ogbuehi was going to battle with Brandon Shell for the right tackle spot. They were pretty high on him. Pete said they didn't give him enough chances last year and he's a lot better. He did play pretty well other than the first game against Philly, which he was awful. What do you guys think that they're going to do, like tackle-wise? Forsythe, you guys agree. Curhan and Ogbuehi, do you have an opinion there?
I don't think they would cut Cedric.
Okay. Why?
They just extended him. Like, from a contractual perspective, it really wouldn't make a ton of sense. I think
did
they
use
would.
a void year on him. From what I understand, it would be $350,000 if they cut him.
You're right. Is any of that base salary guaranteed? Do we know?
You would know better than I would. I mean,
I'm going to go the other way.
yeah.
I think building a roster and you can have a rookie undrafted free agent for 4 years versus a 1-year player who's almost 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're at the same level, you got to take the rookie because you're risking losing a guy you might have for 4 years at dirt cheap. And who showed something, versus if Jamarco Jones can fill in a right tackle, I think I don't think that's a smart way to build a roster. That's how you end up with holes the next year.
Well, and guys, Brandon Shell's not on a long-term deal.
No,
Right.
last year
He's in his exactly.
So, I mean, right tackle is a position you got to be planning for. We talk about left tackle with Dwayne Brown. Right tackle is a question mark in the future as well. I think having two guys, having a Curran who's potentially waiting in the wings at right tackle. You've got Jamarco Jones and Forsyth, who could be your left tackles in training. Like, I think it makes a bunch of sense. But I think it would be a surprise for a lot of people if Abuehi doesn't make the team. The other guy that I don't have making the team right now is Jordan Simmons. I mean, from a guard position perspective, you got Damian Lewis, you got Gabe Jackson. Obviously, they're going to make it. Phil Haynes, I think, is close to a lock to make it. That's 3. And then Ethan Posick, if he's a backup, he actually can play guard. So that's 4 guards.
Plus Jones and Curran.
And Jones also has played guard. Curran, I think they actually were playing at guard, but ended up moving to tackle. So I think they already think he can play guard. So again, Abuehi does not play guard. So I think that's another point in the favor of Curran. That would be pretty exciting Curran actually graded out pretty well. He's played both left and right tackle. He's played guard. Like, that could be a pretty good story. Undrafted free agent for the Seahawks. Played in a power conference and multi-year starter. They could find a diamond there. We talked about defensive line. Obvious ones that are going to make it: Carlos Dunlap, Poona Ford, Al Woods, Brian Monet, Benson Mayowa, Kerry Hyder Jr., Rasheem Green. Those guys are obvious. LJ Collier and Kemdiche we talked about. I think, Jeff, you and I are on the same. I think we're in the same boat. I would rather them keep a guy like Kemdiche than Collier. I think they're more likely to keep Collier, so I have them cutting Kemdiche.
Wow, I'm kind of surprised to hear that, actually.
He hasn't played, and I think they have more invested in Collier than they do in him. I think he has higher upside than Collier for sure. But yeah, I mean, your expectation. So tomorrow, Evan, your expectation is what? That they're going to cut Collier?
No, I think they keep him.
Yeah.
Not saying it's the right move.
I would rather the other way, but I think the injury makes it much more likely that Collier makes it. And they say, sorry, you couldn't stay healthy. We would have liked to see.
That's where I am as well. And then, I mean, those are the big questions. And then I think you get into cornerback.
Can I ask you one real quick question on the defensive line? We haven't talked a ton about him, but and I don't think he's going to be cut. But what are your guys' expectations for Kerry Hyder this year?
Brian, you want to handle this one?
I mean,
did I miss a conversation or something?
No, I mean, just laughing because I've been a Kerry Hyder promoter.
Skeptic?
He's
like the Hyder super fan.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of Kerry Hyder. In fact, I'm going to bring up his pressure stats again to make sure I get these right. But
did you hear his teammates are impressed with him, Brian?
What's that?
His teammates are impressed with him.
They should be.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a high effort player. He's not. No one's going to look at Kerry Hyder and be like, "Oh, dude, this guy's an intimidating athlete." Like, he's short and stubby, and he's not particularly fast or twitchy. He is like a high effort player, which I usually am not a huge fan of. But the guy has quick get off, and he is relentless, and he makes plays. He splits double teams. He tracks people down. And last year he had 55 pressures, 55. And that would have been, I believe, second on the Seahawks. I'll have to pull it up here to make sure. Let me pull up Seahawks. But, and that's not the first time I was like, oh, that was just last year. He's not that kind of player. He had 55 pressures 3 years ago too for Detroit. Like, it's not something that he doesn't do. And I think he should be the starting 5 tech, like, opposite of Carlos Dunlap. And let me just pull up real quick. Yeah. You want to know who had the most pressures on the Seahawks last year? You guys are going to love this name. You want to guess before I tell you? Most pressures on the Seahawks last year. Sacks plus hits plus hurries.
Jamal?
Probably is.
Nope. Top 2 players last year in pressures. They're not named Carlos Dunlap. Not named Jamal Adams.
Mayowa?
It's not.
Jaron Reed is number 1 with 41. Benson Mayowa is number 2 with 36. Kerry Hyder had 55. And I just want to double check. He had 437 pass rush snaps. So he did 55 pressures and 437 pass rush snaps. Jaron Reed, it took him 605 snaps to get 41 pressures. So couple hundred more snaps, 14 less pressures.
Ryan, where's Puna in there?
Puna is 5th on the Seahawks. He had 28 pressures and 430 pass rush snaps.
Okay.
He did come on toward the end of the season.
He was playing on nose tackle.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just think people are totally sleeping on Kerry Hyder. And if I look in the preseason this year, I mean, he got some snaps. He was good for a few pressures in every game. He had a sack in the Chargers game. Like, he's just good for getting at the quarterback. So yeah, sorry. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
I almost feel like Dunlap is like falling completely under the radar. Like, we haven't seen him. We haven't heard anything about him.
We just expect him to be good.
I know. It's just kind of weird. Like, his name never gets mentioned.
What's your expectation for Dunlap? For me, like, I'm expecting over 10 sacks this year.
I think just he'll make a few plays a game that he just has athletic abilities with his size and length that other people just can't. There was one play in that Washington game last year where he ended up like jumping the snap count and like doing a somersault and tackling Dwayne Haskins. And there just aren't a lot of people who are 6'8" that can move like that. So he's not like the most down to down pressure player like some of these other guys, but he just makes plays that athletically just looks different than every other player on their edge group.
Well, and I think Puna Ford is also like super underrated. Like, and I'm going to pull up some grades here, but like, if I just go over the last part of the season, when he started playing 3 tech instead of just playing nose. I don't know exactly when that started, but I remember looking at it and let's see if I can find this. Well, I just know that Puna Ford was started jumping to the top 10 of defensive tackles in the NFL over the last part of the season, including as a pass rusher. So I think he's another guy that people are sleeping on a little bit because he was played a different position last year. Yeah, it's taking me too long to pull this all together, but I know I found it last year. So, all right. So otherwise, like, we talked about corner. The only other question I've got is whether like Ashari Crosswell makes it, whether Ryan Neal gets cut, not cut, sorry, put on IR.
What's Neal's injury status?
I don't know. Jeff, do you have that?
I don't know off the top of my head either.
Like, how severe was?
It didn't seem major, but
wasn't it just like a thigh issue or something? Or am I hallucinating?
I can't even remember.
Yeah.
The BBK injury kind of sucks.
Why?
I like the dude. I don't think he's particularly good. I just felt bad.
Valor's kind of crazy what he's doing. Like, Ballora is like an animal linebacker.
He really is.
Yeah, he looks really good.
The one-time versatility has ever worked out for the Seahawks.
Yeah,
Like,
he can play 5 positions.
yeah, I mean, Thank you for mentioning
a
that.
Pro Bowl special teamer, right?
yeah.
He was your fullback, and he looks like, I mean, he looked like a legitimate backup linebacker, like really good tackler, picking the right holes.
Mhm.
I'm not convinced he's a downgrade from BBK. Based on what we saw. So, look, we've been going at this for 90 minutes now. I mean, are there any other surprise cuts that you guys see that we haven't talked about? If the Seahawks like make a trade or anything else that you have in mind?
I don't know about a surprise cut, but I could see Rasheem Green being traded tomorrow.
Interesting. Why? I've heard some people mention that a little bit. I don't quite see it. So tell me what you see.
I just think that defensive line has more depth than most people realize. And I think there's a lot of bodies there. And he just really hasn't lived up to his potential here. I think you might be able to get. Am I insane to say that you could maybe get like a 5th round pick for Rasheem Green?
Well, he was a second, wasn't he? And he's
4th or 5th, maybe.
still super young.
Yeah, but very raw at the same time, right?
I don't think I'd trade him for a 5th round pick.
You don't think so?
I wouldn't. Would you, Jeff?
Not really. You're not really. I don't really see the value in that.
I mean,
I could see it happening.
Interesting. I mean,
third rounder, by the way, not a 2nd round.
He was a 3rd rounder?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're gonna trade him, I'd rather try to get a player.
Yeah. I mean, there's enough people that need a defensive lineman. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'd want to see another corner.
It's less that I want them to, and it's more like it's got a weird vibe that he's not going to be there tomorrow. I'm probably wrong, but
no, I think it's definitely a possibility. It's not.
Like I said earlier, Greg Bell seemed to indicate he thinks Trey Flowers might get cut.
I'm down on Trey, but that would be kind of surprising.
Yeah, because then who's the backup right corner? And DJ Reed hasn't even been healthy.
Like Trey Flowers isn't good, but he's not so good that you
cut. No, if he's your 4th cornerback, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
If he's your 2nd, you're fucked. Like,
yeah, I'm kind of curious about this. Yeah, I didn't think Trey was that bad this preseason, to be honest. And I've been as hard on him as anybody. Yeah, I don't know. I think that'd be a real mistake, but whatever. Sorry, I'm looking around seeing if I can find any other info. But yeah, I think it's gonna be. I think Abuehi to me is probably the biggest. Could be the biggest name, which is not a huge name. Collier would be the other guy. Otherwise, like, yeah, I don't know that especially with the Sidney Jones trade, like, I definitely like the way the roster plays out better with Sidney Jones on that cornerback list. I mean, I like it a lot better with his name on there. So, Jeff, one last question before we kind of wrap it up. You had said you were hoping that they might get a receiver. What kind of receiver are you looking for? Like assuming that you've got Metcalf and Lockett and Eskridge, are you hoping someone like takes Swain's snaps or what are you thinking?
Thinking more of a big body outside receiver that if Metcalf did get hurt or Lockett did get hurt, I would like to see someone who can step in and be more of the outside receiver so Eskridge can stay in his role and you're not having to play Freddie Swain as a starter. I think Swain's fine, but to me, if there's one injury in the top two, yeah, Eskridge helps, but I think I would like to see a more capable outside receiver backup. I think Penny Hart fills in as a great backup for Eskridge. I think Swain can sort of fill that role in a pinch, but if DK gets hurt, you're starting Lockett, Eskridge, and Swain.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather someone who can be that outside and not Cody Thompson.
Yeah. I get that. Interesting. Okay. All right, guys. Anything else that we have not covered that we should before we wrap this bad boy up?
I just can't believe the next game that we're playing is like a real actual football game.
Well, you want to say for a second about the Colts? I mean, what's going on with the Colts?
There's a lot.
Yeah, so Carson Wentz, is it Ryan Kelly?
We'll start out. They're one of the least vaccinated teams in the league, and I know their GM and coach have been very upset about it.
What's their percentage of vaccination?
I don't know, but so far they've had, Carson Wentz, their quarterback, had a foot surgery. Now he's on the COVID list. Quentin Nelson just came off the COVID list. Ryan Kelly's their Pro Bowl center. He's on the COVID list.
Mm-hmm.
There's rumors that Darius Leonard, who's their best defensive player, is not vaccinated. And the Colts they're a very small market team, and their media is very Colt friendly and very player friendly. The message is turning really sour just about the vaccination stuff, and they're setting themselves up for failure with a pretty good team because the players aren't vaccinated. A lot of their core players don't seem to be vaccinated, and things have started to unravel. And T.Y. Hilton had a neck injury this week. On top of that, kind of had an off season from hell. So we don't know if Wentz is going to play in the opener. We don't know if Nelson's going to play. We don't know if Ryan Kelly's going to play.
Well, hold up. Is Carson Wentz vaccinated?
No.
Openly, no.
I believe he was wearing a mask in his press conference, and there was an article from one of their equivalent of Bob Condona just saying that he's a bad teammate and he's putting the team up in the air because he won't get the needle. I don't know. I think it's pretty. Yeah.
Well, I think we saw the tweet from a beat report today that they have to quarantine for 10 days if they're positive, I think. So the game is 12 days away. We're kind of at the point here, guys, where if a player gets, a close contact or a positive, it impacts the regular season and availability for games. So this is where, being vaccinated is a legitimate competitive advantage and where we have to give credit to the Seahawks for doing such a strong job. I think they're at 99% or minus one player.
There's one player at last we heard that was not vaccinated. We don't know which one. And
Tyler Ott, please get vaccinated.
What's that?
Tyler Ott, please go get your ass vaccinated. Sorry, continue.
I think the Seahawks were the only team in the NFL that didn't have any positive COVID tests last year.
Yeah,
they were.
That's not nothing, guys.
It's a big deal.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Tough.
They're kicking butt on this whole, pandemic thing. Pete Carroll deserves credit for that.
Yeah. It's crazy. So we should talk about what's coming up. So tomorrow night we're going to be here again. Except we're going to hopefully the official deadline is 1 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow. The teams have to turn in their final rosters. Usually what happens is you get some leaks ahead of that time of individual players, but they're always the obvious. We already saw DeReese, Roberson or whatever his name is, the receivers, but going to be cut. Well, no shit. There'll be other guys like that, the agents or whatever beat writers will start sharing out, but you don't get the full list until the team puts out their PR announcement with the official rosters. The Seahawks seem to always be the last team to do it. It's usually 2 or 3 hours at a minimum after the deadline, but we're going to have a show tomorrow night where we will react to the roster as it stands. usually part of the reason the Seahawks are late is because they're making trades and they're making like IR decisions and things like that. So we will do as best we can. We're going to be, hopefully late enough that we'll be able to give you a complete reaction to the decisions going to be made. And then Wednesday is fun. Wednesday is our prediction show. We have the whole group, the whole podcast crew, whole Hawk Blogger crew, whole Real Hawk Talk crew has filled out a bunch of predictions, both scheduled predictions for win-loss records, when the season's going to end for the team, but also things like, how many field goals Jason Myers is going to miss. And Evan's got a particularly strong point of view on that one. How many, receiving yards DK Metcalf's going to have this year. So we'll go through all that Wednesday. It'll be fun. Get the crew together and go through that. So we're 3 days in a row. You're going to get extra Real Hawk Talk this week, which I know everyone's excited about. And the best.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, of course.
The last time Jason Myers missed a regular season field goal was literally years ago. Literally years ago. That's an accurate statement.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that hits home.
I know,
in your soul.
Like a 60-yard field goal last year, right?
You're playing with fire now.
Nathan Ernst shitting on that contract from day one.
I can't believe Dayna said such mean things in that.
Yes,
I'm actually happy for that kid though, because like there was a ton of criticism with that contract, and he had a rough first year. So
it still was a bad contract, but I'm glad he's outperformed it. So, yes, we'll do the prediction show 3 straight nights. There may be more moves. You're going to want to know when we're on talking about it. So click subscribe. We're trying to get up to 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel this year. We're at like just under 7 right now. Like, please click subscribe. Click the like for the show. If you haven't already, it takes like a second. Just click it. And then click the bell to get notified when we go live. Always big news to react to. And patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up now, get immediate access to our Slack channel, which has been hopping and bopping with all the news. As soon as the Sidney Jones news came out, that Slack channel just started up, and a lot of good information getting traded around there. So join the community and help us, raise money for a good cause. So great seeing you all tonight. Looking forward to seeing you the next couple nights. Tons of fun Hawk stuff to talk about. And guys, like, there's reason to feel like this team may be worth getting excited about. I don't know. It's in that mode where I feel like it's a little bit on a knife's edge, and the first few weeks of the season are going to tell us so much about this team. It's gonna be cool. We're gonna be there with you the whole way. So with that, take care. Have a good night. Go Hawks.